Hello, my name is Jose Javier Garza, and I'm the archivist for the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center Research Medical Library's Historical Resources Center. In celebration of the American Library Association's Preservation Week, I have created a brief video on preservation for your records. I'll be giving a few tips on how to preserve your papers, photographs, and electronic records. These tips will be useful if you are planning on keeping the materials for your personal collections or if you are planning on donating the records to an archive such as the HRC. The first step in any conservation plan is to stabilize the environment. The following information is helpful for both your paper and your photographic records. Make sure your records are kept in a cool and dry environment. A lower temperature and humidity prevents the natural decay that is inherent in all materials. Make sure you keep important documents away from light. Light damage is both cumulative and permanent. The best example is to look at newsprint after it's been left out in the sun for a while. Make sure to keep other contaminants, such as bugs and dust, away from any vital records. Try to avoid storing the most important records in an attic or a basement. These rooms are not temperature controlled and may leave your records vulnerable in case of an emergency such as a hurricane, a tornado, or a flood. Do not store boxes on the floor and keep them away from windows. This is especially important in cases such as hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods. Here are some tips for storage and housing of paper materials. Store items of the same size together. Separate poor quality paper, such as newsprint, from more important documents. The acid in newsprint can migrate and damage higher quality papers. Another thing to do is to photocopy the newspapers onto a higher quality paper stock and then discard the original if you want to store them together. Avoid using staples, paper clips, tape, and rubber bands on any vital records. In a humid environment, paper clips tend to rust and will damage the materials. Glues are made of chemicals that can damage or stain important records. Several vendors sell stainless steel paper clips and staples which do not rust if you do need to bind documents together. Make sure to unfold any papers or pamphlets you have in your files. Make sure all folders are properly labeled and dated to preserve the intellectual content of the records. This will help you remember what is in the files, and it'll help any future archivists or historians identify the records should they come across them in the future. If you are using adhesive labels on your folders, make sure to use a stainless steel staple because the labels will fall off after several years. Here are some tips for the storage and housing of photographic materials. When handling photographic materials, use gloves or wash your hands, and make sure to touch the edges of the photographs and not the actual image. The oils from our skin can damage materials. For important images, make sure to store them in an archival quality plastic sleeve or in an acid-free envelope. Each option has both advantages and disadvantages. When using plastic, you can still see the image, but because of the environment created by the plastic encapsulation, any chemicals that off-gas from the photograph will linger and may damage the prints in time. Using a lot of sleeves adds additional weight and bulk to any box, so be careful when lifting the boxes because they may be heavy. When using paper envelopes, the materials are opaque, so prints must be removed in order to see them, and the friction from moving the prints may damage them if done repeatedly. However, the paper is porous, so any chemicals will pass through and not linger with the image. If you are going to use paper envelopes, make sure to mark the envelope on the outside so you know what the image is, and so you won't have to remove it repeatedly. If you have to mark the actual image, use a soft-tipped pencil, and also write on the edge so you don't leave an impression on the image side of the photograph. Make sure to save your negatives. The materials in negatives will last a lot longer than actual prints. Store your negatives away from your prints in case one area of your home or office is damaged during an event such as a hurricane, fire, or flood. That way, if prints are damaged, you can always go back to the negatives to get additional copies. If you're going to frame an image or use one in a scrapbook, make sure to use a duplicate copy of the image and not an original. Here are some tips for storing electronic records. There are several types of electronic records that we use every day, including word processing documents, spreadsheets, databases, pictures, movies, and music. Like all of our materials, there is no guaranteed way to preserve them in perpetuity. The difference is, even when paper is damaged, there is a good possibility that you can still read it. When digital records corrupt, it may be difficult or even impossible to access the content. Here are some tips to preserve your digital files. Always keep an original version of the file in its native format. You can store these files on a portable hard drive or a flash drive, or on a physical media such as a disc or DVD. But be warned, just because DVDs may last hundreds of years, we don't know how much longer DVD players are going to last and be manufactured. Think about how difficult it is to find a computer with a floppy disk drive. If you do save onto a physical media, make sure you refresh the files to a new format every once in a while. For example, moving files from your computer to a floppy disk, then moving from a floppy to a DVD, and then from a DVD to a portable hard drive, and then from a hard drive to whatever the next ubiquitous file saving format is. In addition to keeping an original version of the file, try migrating the file to a newer format once it becomes available. For example, saving older Word documents into the Word 2007 format, which is called DocX. Remember that in some cases, when you migrate to a new file format, there will be some loss of information. Due to the inherent vice within all of our documents, there is no surefire way to ensure that all documents will be preserved forever. But taking the time to assess your files and determine which ones you'd like to keep around, and then taking some steps to preserve them, will help make them last longer than if you did nothing. If you have any questions, contact me at 713-792-2285 or write me at jjgarza@mdanderson.org. Thank you very much for your time and for helping preserve the history of making cancer history.